Hello, welcome to Brian's Mostly Metal Updates. This is going to be an introduction video. Since this is only my second upload, I thought I would introduce myself, talk about my life as it pertains to music. I'm going to keep it, it's a music channel, so I'm going to talk about music throughout my life, what I listen to at different points in my life, when I discovered different genres, things like that. Talk a little bit about concerts I attended over the years of note, things that I think are interesting. Uh, just stuff like that. I've got a Dave Mustaine story from 1987, so you might want to stick around for that at the very least. So, my life in music as a child, before I started listening to music on my own, I just heard what was around me. My parents were big Elvis fans, so I heard a lot of Elvis. They also loved country music. So, my mother, for example, loved Charlie Pride, uh, Webb Pierce, Loretta Lynn, stuff like that. My dad, when I think of my dad, I think of Ernest Tubb and Boxcar Willie for some reason. I know he loved both of them. I don't know. Elvis, country music, none of it stuck with me. I mean, none of it rubbed off on me. I'm not a fan of either. So, you know, mid to late 70s, my first records were these like the monster surf music records, Frankie Stein or whatever type stuff. I don't know if it was that one specifically, but I think there were others like that it was essentially just surf music with a monster theme lyrics. Maybe not even lyrics, some of them. They were just instrumentals. But it had monsters on the cover, of course, so I was into monsters as a kid. So I had some of those. And those like haunted house uh, sound effect records, I had some of that stuff. My first music on vinyl was Kiss. At some point, 77-ish probably, I discovered Kiss. Now, I was only 7 years old, and, it was like, I don't know, I was a kid. Kids being into Kiss was normal. I don't know if that seems abnormal, but we were into Kiss. I was ace for Halloween, the whole 9 yards. So no, I was into Kiss as a child and only Kiss. I mean, I was obsessed with Kiss. I had every Kiss record, including the solo albums. I remember when the solo albums came out. Uh, I had not all the toys, but over half the toys, I think, that they made for Kiss, I owned. Uh, no, I mean it was normal for kids to be into Kiss, and I was, hardcore until let's say 1980. The next time period I've got written down is 1980 to 1983. So, significant things that happened in that time period. I started listening to the radio. Obviously, I heard the radio when I was around it, but it was 1980-ish that I decided to turn on the radio and listen for myself and see what music is playing. It was probably like my birthday's in June, so I turn in the middle of the year. So in the 1980, I turned 10. So, uh, so I started listening to the radio. What was playing on the radio a lot at that particular moment was Alice Cooper. He had just came out with Flush the Fashion, and the song Clones was playing nonstop on the radio. Love that song. So for my 10th birthday in 1980, I got Flush the Fashion on vinyl. That was my first non-Kiss record. I also, soon after, I couldn't remember the exact year, but I think it's in that time period, I inherited a record collection. My brother-in-law uh, gave me his record collection. Now, it was what you'd expect from like classic rock. Pink Floyd, Leonard Skinner, The Police, Led Zeppelin, stuff like that. I became obsessed with Led Zeppelin, went through a Led Zeppelin phase, had the t-shirt and everything, the one. Discovered Ozzy and Black Sabbath at some point. Probably, like, it wouldn't surprise me if I heard Black Sabbath on the classic rock station locally, because they played good stuff. I mean, that really exposed me. The local classic rock station turned me onto a lot of good stuff. The last important thing from that time period, I got my first Sony Walkman. And that's when I became a cassette guy, mostly. I still would buy vinyl here and there, but 90% of what I bought was on cassette from the time I got a Walkman on. So that was 80 to 83. The next time period of my life is 1983 to mid 1988. Things went fast in those years. Those are the years right here, right? So I discovered Judas Priest and Iron Maiden pretty early on when I started junior high. And then Metallica. I didn't look up the date, but I remember the first time I heard Metallica. I bought Kill 'Em All. From the best of my recollection, it had only been out a month or two when I bought Kill 'Em All. So that's basically where I'm coming from. I was the perfect age. I'm lucky to be the perfect age that I was right at the right when all this stuff hit, because after Kill 'Em All came out, it was just nonstop after that with good music, and I was right there for it. So my first concert was supposed to be in 1984, Motley Crue and Ozzy Osbourne, and the show got canceled. Ozzy got injured or something filming a music video, and had to cancel some shows, and our show we had tickets for was canceled. My brother-in-law was taking me to Ozzy, got canceled. So my actual first concert was the following year in 85. I saw Dio. So good show. I love Dio. How can you not love Dio? 1986, I saw Metallica, Master of Puppets tour with Cliff Burton. I've got a Cliff Burton story that I'm going to save for another video. It's not a big it's a Cliff Burton. I consider it a Cliff Burton story. Not a good one, but it's a story. At least I've got one. 1987. Okay, Megadeth. 1987. So Megadeth came to town opening for Alice Cooper. Megadeth did a record signing at the local record bar at the mall. So go to the record signing, and the band is all sitting in a row. Poland and Elfson, I don't remember which was first, but those two were first. And then Dave, and then Garth Samuelson was at the end. So you just go down the row, meet the first guy, he signs your record, he slides it to the next person, you meet him, he signs it, next. So I don't know what to say to people. I clam up, right? So I was probably, not nice to meet you or whatever, And it's like, they sign it, next one signs it, it's Dave's turn. Dave looks at me, and I'm wearing a Slayer t-shirt. Dave says, Slayer, huh? I don't know what to say. I'm like, yeah. He's like, huh. Turns up his nose, signs the record, slides it to Gar, looks to the next person, and just completely ignores me, right? Gar, he signs it, and, he draws like a little cigarette with smoke coming out, on the picture. That's where they signed it, on the back of the record where their pictures were. He drew a little cigarette coming out of his mouth with smoke, and, kind of chuckled and passed it to me like, yeah, Dave was just a dick. Here you go. But whatever. I don't hold a grudge like Dave does. I just found out recently that Kerry King was actually in Megadeth for like a handful of shows. And Dave wanted him to be in Megadeth permanently and quit Slayer, and he told him no. So I guess Dave was pissed that Kerry turned him down and held a grudge, was still holding a grudge, 3-4 years later or whatever it was. This was 87, that I met him. But, I mean, I wasn't traumatized or nothing by Dave being a dick, But it's my Dave Mustaine story. That's all I've got. The one and only time seeing Megadeth, 1987. Good show. Made a banner. Me and my friend Joe Shout out to Joe in St. Louis. We made a banner where Joe was a good artist. He drew basically the album cover. We had like I think it was like a bed sheet, white sheet. He drew the album cover on it and Megadeth across the top and Kicks Ass down the side. Megadeth Kicks Ass. And we held it up and we threw it up on stage, and a roadie came and got it. And we saw the roadie had the banner. Once they saw what it was, they had it folded up, and the roadie guy was like kind of kneeling on the side of the stage, and we could see he had the banner, like he was going to maybe bring it out, see if the band would hold it up or something. And it never happened. Never happened. But somebody came to us. We were in the front row for this show, right? And somebody come out and was like, "Are you the guys that threw the banner out?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Dave saw it. He loves it. You know." And that was that. We're like, well, let us meet him. Let us backstage, and couldn't do that. But they did acknowledge that Dave saw the banner that we made and he liked it. So maybe he's not a dick. Okay. Of course, if he knew it was the guy with the Slayer shirt, maybe he would have said it was crappy. Who knows? Anyway, Dave Mustaine. What else do I have down here? Oh, here's a story. Let me know if something like this has ever happened to you. This was 1987. There was a compilation on New Renaissance Records called Speed Metal Hell 3. And I remember I was going to look it up, and I didn't. Off the top of my head, the only band I remember off of it was Pap Smear. Their thrash band out of Las Vegas. They had a song called Die Killing, and it was an amazing song. There may be other good things that I'm just forgetting, but off the top of my head, Pap Smear, I remember loving off that compilation. So I remember buying it on cassette. And remember, it had like this little, my recollection, it was like a little demon like running through a swamp or something. Then it had like the names of all the bands on the cover. When I went to check out, the woman, saw the tape, and she kind of looked me up and down and kind of snickered a little bit. And like I was never really mouthy or anything, so I was like, what? And she's like, I wondered what the person would look like that bought this tape. Like totally looking down on me because I'm buying Speed Metal Hell 3. It's like, screw you, record bar lady. But has anything like that ever happened to you when you're making a music purchase? Has anybody ever kind of looked down on you or had like a snide remark because of what you're buying? I mean, let me know in the comments because I'd like to hear it. Didn't happen all the time. That's the only one really that stuck with me because it was, I don't know, it makes you feel small, and it shouldn't because, screw you. But here's another story from around that same time period that's a similar, having a problem because of metal. Now, keep in mind at this point, I wore metal shirts every day. These were the prime years, and I was totally immersed. I was ordering out of the back of Metal Mania or whichever magazine, there was, you could order t-shirts. So I was ordering t-shirts. I had Merciful Fate. I had more than one Slayer shirt, more than one Metallica shirt, more than one Overkill shirt. Just everything I was listening to that I could order a t-shirt, Voivod. I was ordering shirts. I'm pretty sure I had a Possessed shirt. It's just everything I could order, I ordered. I wore them every day. That was my thing. I wore metal shirts every day. Okay. So I was working for a time at McDonald's flipping burgers. So when I go in to work, I'm wearing my uniform. But when you go in to check the schedule, like on your day off, you're wearing your street clothes. So of course I'm wearing a metal shirt. So one day I go in to check the schedule for the following week, and there's this manager. She was, let's just call her, a devout Christian manager. She flat out asked me if I was a devil worshiper one day because I was wearing metal shirts. And she wasn't joking around. She was serious. Like this was a serious thing to her. And I kind of laughed it off. Like, no, Come on, you know? And after that, she stopped putting me on the schedule. She didn't fire me, she just quit putting me on the schedule. And because I hated the job, I never said anything. So that was, basically a Christian woman that was manager of McDonald's fired me because I wore metal shirts. Not a big deal. I mean, I still got my uniform. I never turned my uniform in because she didn't fire me. I didn't quit. I just stopped going to work. She stopped putting me on the schedule. That's, it sounds like a Seinfeld episode or something, but it's like, that's, you know, still eat there, you know. I don't hold a grudge against McDonald's, you know, but whatever. But it's just something that happened that I wrote down it's metal related, right? So I should also mention during this time period, I also discovered punk. So Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Misfits, Dead Kennedys, you know, the typical what you'd expect, you know. I still remember hearing the first Suicidal Tendencies album when it came out. It was like, whoa, I'd never heard anything like that before when that came out. But no, it was, but like I said, this is a mostly metal show, so I just mentioned the punk stuff in passing. Also in passing, uh, during the 83 to mid 88, VHS rentals became a thing, and I became obsessed with horror movies, Italian horror specifically, but all horror movies I was just obsessed with, my high school years. So that'll come up again later. Next up, mid 1988 to 1995. Now, these are probably some of the best years of my life musically. Starting out, I moved from Illinois to Florida. I moved to Sebastian, Florida, which was roughly 30 minutes from Melbourne, Florida. So Melbourne, Florida had a scene, a punk scene, a metal scene. There were bands coming through there all the time. So I'm about to read off a bunch of bands that I saw that are just highlights, because that was like, like a 7-year stretch where, you know, I was still focused on music, but now I was going to shows, because where I grew up I grew up 2 hours from St. Louis, and going 2 hours to St. Louis to a metal show when you're under 18, it's just not going to happen. Parents are not going to allow that, right? So, you know, I was lucky to get to see Metallica in '86 because they played Cape Girardeau, and that's only like a 45-minute drive from home. So that was, I guess, allowable to a 16-year-old. But uh, so anyway, no, once I got to Florida, I was able to go to shows, and I took full advantage for about 7 years straight. Every band that came through that I wanted to see, unless there was a really, really good reason, I went, right? My first Florida show was Slayer, December of '88 on the South of Heaven tour. Slayer, Motorhead, Overkill. Great show. I've actually got a great story, something that didn't actually happen to me, but it was an amazing story that happened to somebody else that I've told many times. I've decided I'm going to do a series of videos called Concert Stories, because I figure I've got about 6 interesting stories, things that happen at concerts. So look forward to that. And I'm going to save my Slayer story for those videos. But no, Melbourne, Florida, there was a punk scene. There was a club called 2225 that I think was on US 1. And then later on, there was a club, bigger club called the Power Station, I think on the other side of town. I forget the streets. But did I mention WFIT? I don't think I did. WFIT, there was a college, listener supported college radio station, WFIT. Friday night and Saturday night, they played punk and hardcore. So I listened to a lot of punk after that. Still listen to metal. I never stopped listening to metal. But at a certain point, 88 to 95, the balance was at least equal in the amount of punk and metal I listened to. I think later on is when punk increased, but during the 88 to 95, I still went to a ton of metal shows, but I went to a ton of punk shows too. So, uh, yeah, here's some of the bands that I saw. Just my first punk show when I moved to Florida, January of '89, was the Circle Jerks. This show is important, not important. This show stands out because you may be aware that Chris Poland from Megadeth played bass for the Circle Jerks in a handful of shows. This is one of those shows that I was at. So I saw Chris Poland, big deal. I saw Chris Poland play bass for the Circle Jerks, but you know, uh, 1989 June, I saw the Cro-Mags, and Destruction, which just has always seemed like an odd matchup. Destruction opening for the Cro-Mags. You could tell which band people were there for by whether or not they had hair, because I had a lot more hair back then. But no, I mean, it's like half the crowd was skinheads, and half of the people there had long hair. And, for Destruction, I'm up front, and between bands, the crowd just kind of shifted, and the skinheads were up front, for the Cro-Mags. Peaceful show. I don't remember any fights. It was just odd. It seemed very surreal, but great time to see Destruction. Been cool to see him a couple years earlier, but no, it was a good show. Who else? 91, I saw The Exploited, and that's a story. I mean, that's definitely a story. Closest I've been to being in a riot, I think. 92, that tour with Napalm Death, Carcass, Brutal Truth, and Cathedral. I saw that in Melbourne. Great to see Napalm Death in 92. That was a good period for me with them. I love that era, Napalm Death. But Carcass, seeing Carcass in 92, that was the Necroticism, uh, Descanting the Insalubrious, I think is the name of that album. Love that album. Might be my favorite Carcass album. They were on tour supporting that. I've just been a huge Carcass fan ever since. I mean, you know, and I think that show did it for me. It was just such a great show seeing them in 92. Now also in 92, Entombed, Exhorter, Dead Horse. I've got a story that ends with a trip to the ER for that show. Also, I saw Life Sentence at some point, soon after I moved to Florida at 2225. Great show. I mean, Life Sentence. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a big deal to have seen Life Sentence. It was great. Great show. So I just wanted to mention that. Best concerts. Now I've got 3 down here. It's more like 2 and then an honorable mention, let's say. And the honorable mention, I don't know. The honorable mention, I saw X Cops open for Guar. And seeing X Cops, they've got an album. I should have looked it up. They did an album, I think 95. It came out on Metal Blade Records. You Have the Right to Remain Silent. Great album, from what I recall. I still have the CD. I have 3, 4, 5, 6 CDs that survived my purge of CDs. I told you last video I got 2 records that survived. I got a handful of CDs that survived and 1 cassette that survived when I sold everything. So, no, X Cops, I've still got the CD. I should have brought it down. But no, Metal Blade Records, I remember it being, it's members of Guar. They all dress like cops, like asshole cops, but it was a good show. So I'm going to give that an honorable mention just because it was so memorable. Best show ever, I think, was Gangrene. Now, I'm sorry it's a punk show, but that was February of '89. Wasn't my first ever punk show, but the most insane. I mean, if you're a metal guy that's never been to a punk show, I mean, this one was just completely just off the rails. As soon as the song started, people were stage diving, and they were stage diving until the song ended. And when the next song started, it started all over again, and it was non-stop the entire show till it was over. And I was right in the front, people just jumping nonstop, and it was just amazing. It was just, when people say, "What's your best ever concert?" just without thinking, I usually say Gangrene, because that show is just, and it was probably because it was my first time really experiencing that at the time, and it was the real deal. A small packed club, just hot and sweaty and just, you know, painful a little bit. It was just amazing. Next one I got down, January of 1990, I saw Ministry. Now, this was in support of The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. It was, if you watch the home video for, what was it, In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up, it was filmed on this tour that I saw them on. They had, the fence in front of the stage, so people were climbing up the fence and jumping off. It was another one that was just it was in a not in a club, it was in like a rec center. So there was a very big area, much bigger than the club, that I was used to seeing bands in. And it was just such a huge area, and it was packed, sold out show, possibly. Just packed to the walls. And the pit at one point got so big that it broke off into two smaller pits, and there were two smaller pits going at the same time. It was just crazy, and a good show. KMFDM opened, wasn't impressed by them at all, but no, that Ministry show was just memorable. They put on a good show. Don't really know much. Never didn't keep up with them. You know, I had the live album, and then I had Mine's a Terrible Thing to Taste. I might have ended up getting the one before that, Land of Rape and Honey, maybe at some point I owned on cassette. Didn't keep up with them after, though, for some reason, after that live album that I recall. Other things of note in that time period, the 88 to 95, around 1992, I won't tell the whole story because it's not music related, but I got hold of Necromantic 1, Necromantic 2, and Der Todesking. My German's terrible, but I think it's pronounced Der Todesking, the Jörg Buttgereit films. Got hold of those on VHS from a local video store, sold them to me because they didn't want them anymore after they'd watched them. That rekindled my love of horror movies. So that's going to come up again. But I started collecting movies at that point. One of the reasons, I don't want people to feel sorry for me that I sold all my collection, because I did collect something all my life. It was just movies instead of music. So even though I wish I would have kept all my music and kept buying music, and I wish I had a huge music collection instead of a movie collection at this point in my life. I just enjoy listening to music a lot more than I enjoy watching it. Watching a movie just seems like an event lately, and I just don't have the time and patience for an event. I want to throw on a record and sit and listen to it. I can do that. I can't sit for a 2-hour movie or an hour and a half, whatever. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm not gonna do another take of this. So, I started collecting movies, VHS, Laserdisc. Even I had a Laserdisc player. So 1995 to mid 2000, I was in a relationship and I started a business, and listened to a lot of punk, basically. My show going slowed down quite a bit at that point. I did see NoFX, Bad Religion, and the Meat Men a couple times during that time period. And that's when all my vinyl got sold. I was collecting movies, and I was just starting to lose interest already, so I sold all my records first. Sold that Megadeth signed record at the flea market. I went to some other record signings, just because you buy a record and they sign it for free. So I actually had a Cinderella record. Did not like Cinderella, okay, but I had a signed Cinderella record. And King Cobra. Remember King Cobra with, was it Carmine or Vinny Appice was the drummer? I forget which one. King Cobra did a record signing. I got a King Cobra record signed, so sold all that stuff at the flea market, sold what I could at the flea market, and then I think the rest of my records got sold at the yard sale. So vinyl gone at that point. Mid 2000 to 2005, I moved to Las Vegas in 2000. So what happened during those 5 years? Napster was a thing during that time period. I used Napster to kind of catch up, you know, on what I'd been missing out on. Biggest thing with Napster for me was black metal. The only black metal that I was familiar with from high school was Bathory. All the 90s stuff came, like your Norwegian stuff came in the 90s. I was already out of high school, wasn't really paying attention to black metal at all. So thanks to Napster, that got me caught up on Mayhem and Emperor and Burzum and Immortal and whatever else. Not just the Norwegian stuff, but a couple Swedish bands, including Dark Funeral. Love that first Dark Funeral album. Don't love their latest album. One before was really good. Latest album's not terrible. Just don't like it as much as the previous album, I think. But no, that for me was Napster, discovering a lot of stuff that I'd missed out on previously. You got to realize before that, I only knew one other person, junior high and high school, that was into metal that I could trade tapes with, and and we'd make copies for stuff for each other. Uh, we didn't make like compilations or anything like that, but he had stuff I wanted, he would make a copy, so I didn't have to buy it, kind of thing, and I'd do the same for him. So it helped expand your collection, without spending the money. But we lost contact soon after high school. So I went, until I reconnected with him, I had nobody to trade tapes with, or anything like that. So it was still, anyway, Napster was great. Lars would disagree, but helped me discover a lot of stuff. Another significant thing, 2005 or 2005, I got my first iPod. I ripped every CD I owned and sold almost all my CDs. Like I said, I saved a handful, or a handful survived the purge, but the bulk of my CDs, 99 point however many percent, got sold off after I ripped them and put them on my iPod. Something else from that time period, there was a site called eMusic that I was a member of. It was, at the time, monthly fee of $10, unlimited MP3 downloads. And by unlimited, there was a secret limit that if you went over it, they canceled your account. So you had to be careful. But no, I downloaded tons of music from emusic.com. And that was a combination, stuff, filling gaps in my collection, basically, because I'd ripped my CDs at that point, and I would fill in gaps, stuff that I never owned before I could download from eMusic. Also sold off my cassettes. I estimate between 2000 and 2005, because at that point I wasn't listening to my tapes. I don't even know if I still have my tape. I think I did. It wasn't hooked up. It was in a closet kind of deal, But it was MP3s at that point. The iPod and the MP3s. I had MP3s on my computer, and it was just that was that. Didn't need the tapes anymore. Sold the tapes. Sold those on eBay, so I got better money for the tapes than I got for the vinyl. Sold the CDs too, but I mean CDs. Some of my early CDs were like first pressings or whatever, so I got a little bit for some of them. I don't remember. I had like the first pressing of Seven Churches, and on CD, and you know, I don't remember everything, but some of that stuff went for a little bit of money. But you know, the cassettes I did pretty well with. Nothing. I think I sold them in lots, so it wasn't like I sold them individual. I sold them like a box full. You know, I was happy at the time. I wish I still had them, obviously, but that's that. So 2006 to mid 2018, like what's that, a 12-year stretch? I concentrated on work through most of those years. Concentrated on work. I owned my own business, obviously, since '95. Spent my free time watching and collecting movies still. Would still listen to music while I worked, right? So I'm still listening. You know, my iPod worked for a long time. Still, when I was working at my desk, I had all my MP3s on a computer, you know, that I would listen to. So I continued to listen to music. Didn't necessarily keep up with newer bands, newer releases. I was just listening to my stuff, you know. So there is a bit of a blind spot. I mean, a lot of bands that debuted 2006 to 2018, I'm playing catch up on, you know, because I'm still listening to the same old stuff. I wasn't really buying new stuff at that point. So at some point in 2018, decided to move back to Illinois. So I was starting to feel some regret. You know, I'd lived in Vegas for about 18 years, didn't go to any metal shows. I saw the only bands I saw when I lived in Las Vegas for those years. I saw Alice Cooper once. I saw the Misfits. I think it was that tour that Michael Graves and Dr. Chud like quit the band. I think they quit the band in the middle of the tour or something, or right before. I think they walked off stage. I don't remember. I mean, Michael Graves seemed like an asshole to me. But uh, it was that tour. They had what's his name, Zoli from Ignite on vocals. Terrible show. I mean, just terrible show. But I mean, that's it. I didn't go to any actual metal shows that unless no, I mean, I just didn't, you know. So I decided I wanted to go to a metal show before I moved away. So I went and looked what bands are coming to town. Lo and behold, Dark Funeral was coming to town. So February of 2018, I saw Dark Funeral. That was my first and only metal show when I lived in Las Vegas, which sucks because Psycho Vegas had started going on right before I moved away. And I mean, come on, I didn't even go. I mean, that's just how little I cared about going to shows at that point. You know, or well, during those years in Vegas, you know, I kept my head down. Work came first. Not that I got anything to show for it really, but work came first, and that's that. I mean, my spare time was watching movies, and I didn't go out much. I went to casinos, I gambled, but I didn't go out really and experience much nightlife. I saw Tom Jones once. I saw Siegfried and Roy once. I saw Lance Burton, Master Magician, once. But no, I mean that was Vegas. I did gamble a lot. I'm not going to talk about my gambling, but I gambled way too much when I lived there, and that's beyond the scope of this video. So mid 2018 to now, moved back to Illinois. I'm about 2 hours from St. Louis, so I go to shows there when possible. I'm about 5.5 hour train ride to Chicago. I've been to shows there. I've seen Nunslaughter twice since moving back. Who else? Midnight, Devilmaster, Deicide I saw in Chicago. I saw Blood in Chicago with Squash Bowels, Polish grindcore band. Exhumed I saw fairly recently. My most recent concert I saw Demilich in Chicago. I got video. If you look at my other videos, I've got video from that show if you're interested. I got video from the Deicide show too. Who else? I got tickets to see Cannibal Corpse. That'll be probably my next show, November. Cannibal Corpse in Joliet. Unless I make it to Napalm Death in St. Louis. I think they're playing before that, October maybe. So, that's that. What else? Plans for the channel. So, my main intention when I started this channel was I just wanted to do collection updates because I like watching other people show off their records. So, I just wanted to do the same thing. So, I'm going to try, I think I already mentioned it, I'm going to try something called concert stories. I got maybe as many as 6 videos, maybe as few as 3 videos. We'll see how they go. I don't know. I got plans for videos, put it that way. At least one of them ends with a trip to the ER, so I think they'll be exciting. You know, there's stories that I tell. I mean, that's all I got, stories about shows, you know. So, yeah, I'm going to try to do some rankings. You know, I recently listened to like every Napalm Death album in a row more than once, trying to come up with like the perfect ranking. And I think people are going to disagree with my opinions, but it'll be fine, you know. Lots more collection updates. I hope. I bought quite a lot of vinyl. I got stuff in, you know, on its way now. I ordered some Kiss records the other night. You know, and more concert videos. I'm gonna try to film the whole Cannibal Corpse show. I don't know. I've never done that before. I hate being that guy that films the whole show, but I love watching. You know what I'm saying? So, but I bought balcony seats for the Cannibal Corpse show because I'm taking a friend who's never been to a metal show before. So I wanted to make sure that he could sit and not have to stand for like 4 hours or whatever. So yeah, I got us the only seating in this place in Joliet are the seats around the balcony, and they cost money, but good seats it looks like. So I'm going to do my best to maybe film it's Immolation and Dark Funeral and Cannibal Corpse. And I think from the balcony seats, I could probably film the whole thing without being obnoxious about it, you know, because that you don't want to be standing behind the guy that's, you know, filming the whole show. But because I'll be, you know, at the edge of the balcony, I think I might be able to do. I'm going to try, no promises, but I've always wanted to do that. But it's sometimes I hate to pull out my camera, just do a small clip because you don't want to be that guy that's blocking somebody's view. Some people don't care. I do. But so that's that. That is my introduction video. That's my life. I have a blog, leavesomethingwitchy.com. So I might post this timeline on my blog or something. I want to try to. I haven't updated in months. I do some music reviews. I do some other reviews. You'll see when you get there. I don't want to talk too much about that. But if you're interested, leavesomethingwitchy.com. Anyway, if you made it to the end, thank you very much because I know this was a long one and I'm still getting better at this. So at least I think I am. I'm trying to get better at this, put it that way. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. See ya.